at this time, I'd like to call the Wilmington Wildwood School Project meeting to order. At this time, I would like to ask for a roll call, please.
Certainly. Good evening. Diane Allen. Here. Greg Bendel. He was here a second ago. Kate Bissell. Dr. Glenn Brand.
Here.
Kevin Kyra.
Here.
Michael Camosio. Justin Couchet.
Here.
Marianne Galezzo.
Here.
Nicholas Golden.
Here.
Christine Holleran. Here. John Holloway. Dennis Kelly.
Here.
Paul Melorani.
Here.
Craig Miner.
Here.
Christine Murray. Here. Judy O'Connell.
Here.
Christine Pendergast.
Here.
David Ragsdale.
Here.
Paul Ruggiero.
Here.
Stacy Scott. Here. Eric Schlegel.
Here.
Stephen Turner. And myself, Vivian Verbedian. Greg Bendel.
Kevin was nice enough to write me a pass to the bathroom.
Put that in the minutes.
Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the school building committee membership, and at this time, I'd like to turn it over to town manager Eric Slagle.
Yeah, so I think folks are aware that the select board had a couple of changes. One major change, which was Greg leading the select board back in April. And so I would like to make a motion that the committee expand by one person to appoint Greg Bendel as a community member appointee, since he is no longer on the select board.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
Second.
Question. So that puts us, we go from 23 to 24, is that correct?
I think it's 22 to 23.
23, I like an odd number. Well done, Greg.
Glad I could help.
My thought process is, not to blow smoke, but Greg's been here since the very beginning of this project. He's got a lot of institutional knowledge. I feel like it's only fair to let him, if he wanted to, and by the way, I asked him before this, if he actually wanted to stay on. So he did volunteer for this. I think it's only fair to let him kind of ride this to the end and be a part of the project. Obviously, once we get to the construction phase, we're probably not gonna have a 23-member meetings going forward. We're probably gonna have a much more condensed group, and Greg will be teaching at school, and there'll be other people who probably have commitment issues when it comes to construction. But right now, leading into this vote, I just wanna have everybody on board who I think is a supporter of it. I think Greg's important.
And so will the select board appoint a new member as their representative?
That was something that was discussed, yes, about appointing a new member representative.
But we do have Kevin Kyra as a representative of the select board as well, so.
So a motion's been made, it has been seconded, we still are in discussion. Does anyone else have anything else? Yes?
If you are making a change this evening, to just change Mr. Bendel from a select board representative to just a committee member, make sure that we send that over to the MSBA when we send out our comments. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Not to belabor it, I appreciate this motion, thank you, and I've enjoyed working with all of you, and as you all know, we're so close to the vote with only a handful of meetings. I'd like to be able to see it through with all of you, so.
Absolutely.
Who says we're voting in favor?
So I really need.
Now you know the reason why we need Greg.
Any other further discussion at this time? Hearing none, I'll call for the roll call vote, please.
Diane Allen.
Yes.
I won't call you Greg for yourself, because I think I know the answer, but Dr. Glenn Brand.
Yes.
Kevin Kyra.
Yes.
Justin Couchet.
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo.
Yes.
Nicholas Golden.
Yes.
Christine Holleran.
Yes.
Dennis Kelly.
Yes.
Paul Melorani.
Yes.
Craig Miner.
Yes.
Christine Murray. Yes. Judy O'Connell.
Yes.
Christine Pendergast.
Yes.
David Ragsdale.
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero.
Yes.
Stacy Scott. Yes. Eric Schlegel.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. There are two dates, April 15th, 2025 and April 29th, 2025. Does anyone have any objection to taking them up together?
No objection.
No objection. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written to form?
So moved.
Motion's been made, do I have a second? Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Justin Couchet,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Abstain, I wasn't at one of the meetings.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Malorani,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Stacy Scott,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of invoices warrant number 24. I believe historically this has been turned over to Dennis.
We didn't have the meeting this afternoon to
Okay.
approve that, so I don't think we can vote on that today. The subcommittee didn't meet, because we went right into the,
We can read the warrant article as is, and
Yeah,
then
we can read the
the
word,
committee can vote.
even without recommendation, so.
Okay, so at this time, people should have received warrant item number 24, which has a total for $136,450 is my read. If people can confirm that is correct of what people are seeing on their notes.
That's correct.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion to approve warrant number 24 for $136,450?
I'll make a motion to approve warrant number 24 in the amount of $136,450.
Second.
Seconded and for discussion.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
is that the invoice there?
that is not,
Because
That's
it
not
says
correct.
24, it says 82,550.
correct. So it has been, the one that I have here has been revised. It has $660 to Doran Whittier as part of a traffic study. And then the 50,000 is correct in 540. So
If I may,
The math is not.
I think the numbers are all the same, I think the total's different.
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, Tracy Ingersoll sent out a revision and indicated that there was a cell issue. So I believe the one that I am looking at is correct. So the amount is $136,450, which is different than what you see.
Right, I'm only pointing it out because of that's being shown to the public.
Correct, no,
So-
absolutely, yep, you are correct. Yes, thank you for that.
Each individual number on it is correct, just the total is off. Right?
Correct, that is right. So,
Yes.
yep, everything is there. Yes.
We can
It's-
correct this before it goes to posting.
Yes. So the dollar values are correct, it's just the summation at the bottom. So again, we have a motion, we have a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Absolutely. Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Justin Couchet,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Yes.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Malorani,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Christine Murray,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Christine Pendergast,
Yes.
David Ragsdale,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Stacy Scott,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Motion carries.
So the next item on the agenda is the community outreach follow-up. As has been shared, we did have an abutters meeting on Tuesday, May 13th at the North Intermediate. I would say roughly maybe 30 people, 25, 30 people. We did send out a correspondence to the committee late today. I do recognize that that's late. That was a very lengthy exercise to try and capture all of that information. Some of the concerns you've heard this evening regarding that, there was a presentation or an attempt to give a presentation to the abutters regarding some of the enhancements to the site. I don't want to spot, Lee and Ronnie, but if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you were able to incorporate into it, if you don't mind, in terms of the berm, some of the screening, moving distances away, the fact that we articulated that there's emergency traffic around that direct abutter area, being cognizant of wetlands, things of that nature. So anything that you want to comment on that you were able to share.
That's a good list. I'll throw the lack of site lighting, which I think
Yes.
is
Yes,
a bad
site
thing
lighting was the other one.
for EV usage.
Yeah, I mean, really Judy summed it up for, but, we did hear the comments and we tried from the first meeting that we had and then the May 13th meeting was the second meeting. We had come back with a revised site plan to really try to address a lot of the concerns we heard in that first meeting, which, included additional screening. There were a lot of concerns of views from backyards and making sure that we had berms to build up the screens. And, the location of the turnaround, that was closer to the west property line. We actually moved that further north in the revised plan so that was away from the property lines. Concerns about, the athletic, the playgrounds and the basketball courts and things like that, trying to get those more central to the site, but also improving the security by allowing that so that students do not have to cross the roadway when they were accessing the playgrounds. The wetlands were non-jurisdictional, so that actually, it was more clarifying that for them. And
So,
the lighting, they were.
Can I stop on this for a second? So is that saying that there are not wetlands on that property? Is that what that means?
So the wetlands are actually, there are some wet spots just right next to the property lines and two locations. One is off of our property line, so we actually don't show it on the survey anymore because we're not supposed to survey all the property. And then the one on the south side is just on that south side of that property line. And same thing, really for us initially was that we were considering the buffer zones around those, and that was what was impacting the site. Once it was determined that those were non-jurisdictional, that means there are no buffers around it, and therefore those buffers would then no longer impact the site for this site.
Some other things I just may add, there was talk about concern about traffic, which has been articulated here. There was talk about making sure that there were proper pedestrian access if kids were walking to school, if they had the ability to bring a bike to school. They talked about the crosswalks, making sure possibly a raised crosswalk or something to kind of differentiate that pedestrians would be walking across. That's my recollection. There was discussion about the fire substation as it queues up on 62. There was talk about a proposed Amazon facility that's up off of 62 heading towards North Reading. So it was a very healthy discussion in terms of bringing a host of different concerns. And then, in addition, the talk about the idling of vehicles. If the traffic mitigation was, as has been articulated by Dawn Whittier, is to bring more cars on site, to have cars queuing, and the concern from the neighbors was motor vehicles with their engines on idling. Also, there was some concern about dust and some noise, and so all of those things were talked about. And then, obviously, regarding the community forum that we had tonight, many of you were here to hear that, so you know how that went. And I also articulated to one of the speakers as to why we specifically, using the word target, I say that respectfully, why we wanted to speak to the direct abutters so that we could get at the heart of, as you can see, some of these issues are very passionate for some, and we wanted to give them individualized attention, and that was a judgment call, and we've discussed that. So, obviously, this is open for discussion here. You've heard me say that we've had committee meetings, we've had public meetings. Certainly if there's anybody on the committee that has concerns about the type of outreach that we're doing, I certainly, myself as a committee member, are open to that feedback and any sort of constructive feedback that you think that we could be doing better.
Can I ask just one thing about the butters meeting and not having that listed on the community outreach? The reality is similar to when we meet with public safety, like police and fire, for example. We consider those working groups. So the public and the police and fire, the abutters, sustainability group, and as the project moves on, we'll have an interiors group. We consider those really working sessions because we take that information and we see what we can include into the project as best we possibly can into the next rendition of, say, a site or a floor plan, to really hear that feedback directly. So the reason why it's not listed as a community outreach is because it's actually considered, in our perspective, a working group. And so it's treated slightly different.
Yes.
Thank you, thanks Judy. I'll just say, I attended most of the last abutters forum. I thought it went really well. I thought it was actually a very productive, in the vein of what you were talking about, Ronnie, working kind of focused on, clearly plenty of solutions came out of that, right? The berm and the screen and the light and all that stuff. It was very productive. I just want to commend you, Judy, on how you handled, chairing the start of this motion. It's difficult, because it is a contentious thing, but I appreciate the hard work you put in on managing that, so.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do want to thank you and commend you for today's forum. I was a bit concerned when the review went on for almost 45 minutes, and the potential of not letting the residents speak, seeing that it had to end by 7, but you letting it run until close to 7:30 was the right move to make. Unfortunately, I don't think it ended with a lot of civility, but I want to thank you for allowing the residents that opportunity to speak, and for the members here for also, realizing that we're starting our meeting late as well, but I think it's important that you allowed that to go through.
Maybe going forward, if we could shorten the presentation a little bit more in the next one, and have more of a Q&A. Especially when the amounts are released, I think that's would be important.
Thank you. Yes, David.
I just want to note about the minutes themselves from that meeting is that throughout, Ronnie's last name was called Phillips rather than Philip, and so if we can run a quick
Yes.
find and replace
Yes.
on
Yes.
that before we post them.
Yes, thank you. Tommy, you're capturing all this, my friend? Yes.
I actually haven't reviewed them because they
Yes,
came out
they
while we
were,
were running, so, thank you.
So, they were late breaking, so, and we appreciate people's patience in receiving them in, so. Okay. Moving on to the next item is the design update, and so I will just turn it over to Dora Whittier.
Sure, thank you. So we wanted to just touch on the MSBA comments and give an update on that real quick. So as you know, the schematic design submission, it was submitted on April 24th. We received comments on May 28th, and we are working on providing a response to those comments. We have 14 days, so that'll be this coming Wednesday. And that'll be about June 11th. There was a lot of back and forth with MSBA prior, which I sort of mentioned here and there, but they had questions and we responded to them prior to receiving the comments. So I think the comments actually came back and was a little bit more streamlined. Some specific questions on, say, different timelines. So we'll be just updating the schedule to reflect some of the questions that they have and such. The biggest piece that kind of came out of some of the discussions that were had with MSBA includes what they would be considering for eligible and ineligible for reimbursement. So this slide that you're seeing up on the screen is what we showed after the previous submission. We had about 15,000 square feet that we were anticipating to be ineligible for reimbursement through MSBA. And with schematic design, with our most recent discussions with MSBA, that's actually been reduced. So ineligible square footage is targeted at 13,048 net square feet. And so you'll see in the list in core academic, a lot of these are the same from previous. And then there was just some moving of the numbers on the big spreadsheet. So it just ended up actually reducing what they would be considering as ineligible, which is great news. So, you know, we all know that the gym was gonna be ineligible. There was a little bit of space in the dining and food service, 600 square feet. Offices from admin and guidance, which is about a little over 600 square feet as well. The extended learning areas, originally those were designed at 1,000 square feet, that we actually ended up reducing some of the square footage slightly, and just how it laid out in the plan, so it actually comes out to 790 square feet. We knew that that was gonna be considered ineligible, so that works in the advantage of the budget. CARES offices, it functions here, they need a space, however, MSBA doesn't reimburse for those types of spaces, so just overall, the building went up 2,000 square feet, but ineligible square feet for reimbursement actually went down by 2,000, so I think a win-win in a lot of respect.
So if I could just say something, Ronnie, so for folks who weren't lucky enough to be on that meeting, I can say that it was a really good meeting, and I felt so much better at the end of it than I thought I was gonna feel, because all of the talk that we've done about MSBA and concerns about what their reimbursement rate is gonna be and what the eligible square footage was going to be, I guess I had prepared myself for the worst, and what actually happened was better than I expected, which was they came in saying they were gonna pay for more square footage than we thought, which in turn means our reimbursement rate is higher, which in turn means on the back end, the tax impact's gonna be lower than we thought. So I don't wanna oversell it, but I also wanna undersell it. This is a really incredible news, and I think once we get to the exact number that we're talking about on the 18th, it's gonna be radically different from what we were talking about back in October, in a good way, so.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing that. And I would say, as I was thinking about that same thing, and I would agree completely with you, I can't help but think, and these folks know how this works, but I have to believe that the educational plan really went into articulating the utilization of these spaces, helped justify their view. That's my understanding of how it works. So kudos to the educators and the administrators for their hard work to put together a plan that really passed muster and was well vetted and received by MSBA.
Any questions about that before?
You did not send a copy of this out, though. It was not part of anything that we got, right?
This slide?
Yeah.
No, so we only received, the comments more or less the same day that we sent out the presentation. So we didn't have this information, so I pretty much created it after.
You'll be sending it out, right, too?
Yeah.
Super quickly, where did they make up, what did they approve that was previously not considered reimbursable? Like what is now reimbursable that was not previously? Is it one thing or is it like a smattering?
It's a smattering of them just working through their formula to try and get the best benefit for the town, so we made things around, and they were very cooperative, and there was a long back and forth with them, and them looking for information to back up the support of the things we were trying to execute, and it worked out. Cool.
Fantastic. It really is. So I think for the community, it's a very favorable outcome. So thank you for everyone that was involved and for all your hard work.
Anything further on this, Ronnie, on number 6?
We do. So you might be wondering what we've all been working on while we were waiting for MSBA's response. So we've been working on some of the marketing material that will be, let me say marketing, it's the informational pieces that are going to be sprinkled out to the public to inform them about the project. And this is one of those pieces. So this is a video, so you don't have to listen to me narrating on all the still imagery. This is, we refer to them as flybys, but I'll just play it. It's going to be a few minutes long. But.
I don't know if Dennis is gonna like those lights.
He's gonna love
I wanna know where the scissor lift is.
Ask the same question back.
So, the intent here is for a lot of folks, it's hard to understand what's happening on a floor plan or a site plan. So, thankfully, we have software for three-dimensional modeling that we design, and all the prints that you see really come from a model, and this will help for the public really to visualize what is being proposed here. So, this will be available.
Did you see that tonight? The previous group?
We didn't, because, with all the information we share, we want you to see it first.
Yeah, Paul.
So one of the comments that we got on email from 5/5/2025, the first comment was, the concern is that the noise from the gym is going to carry into the cafeteria and vice versa. Is there any kind of a hard separator that we're going to be able to put in there?
There is in the project, we have a hard acoustical wall between gym opening and the stage,
Okay.
as well as curtains.
One thing, I was looking closely here, and I just saw curtains and drapes. We're going to have like a foldable partition.
Yeah, they're inside behind the and they slide over the glass.
But I think even in that comment, if I remember right, she said that they could still hear it. Correct, if you were, she's actually in a school that has something, so.
Yeah, that was even with the wall in between.
Yeah, there's a wall in between.
So anything that you guys can do to focus on acoustic aspects of what material that's going to be that wall, because we have firsthand that information.
Right.
Whatever this project is, didn't do it right, so.
Thank you for that.
I don't know the vintage of that building, but I can tell you, like, it's a very common thing that we see, given the way the MSBA space guidelines and reimbursements work. Something to be sensitive to, obviously, with the acoustics, but comparing what might be an older vintage building, and I don't know that that's the case.
We could trade the lights for a better wall.
Oh, trust me.
I didn't want to value engineer now.
Well, I've got a pen right here, hold on.
Vivian.
Yes, thank you. I love the presentation, I love the fly-through. If it would be at all possible, maybe to abbreviate it a little and maybe add a classroom perspective. So that way parents are really more concerned about, yes, they love the auditorium space, the cafeteria space, the gymnasium space is all wonderful, and the library, but if they could have a perspective of a classroom, I think that will really solidify it for them.
I think those outward spaces, those outward spaces too, especially in the pre-K to K side, I think is important too.
Thank you. Yes.
What is the plan for how we are going to use that video? How is it going to be distributed? Who's going to own the distribution of it? What's that marketing plan?
Well, I think, if I may, I think today was the first showing of it, so it's all wonderful, and we've had discussions where I would love to see this play in a loop, especially on Fun on the 4th, as well as other events and on our project website. so that it gives a real perspective to those that can't really visualize it off of a flat dimensional plan, to get a really sense of the place for the project. I think we have to discuss it at our public working group, but I think it would be great to demonstrate it and have it on the loop during Fun on the 4th, if we can make that possible.
Well, I also suggest putting it on the town website, the school's website.
It'll be also integrated with Dave Cartoonian's efforts for the next pillar, and he does some really great stuff on speeding it up and little vignettes to support the narrative. So this is, the extended cut, right, of everything. So we can certainly shorten it up. We can split it up into interiors versus exteriors, so it's easily downloadable in different bites. So this was kind of our first pass at it to try and visualize the project, and we're happy to help and get this packaged up and out into the public as fast as we can.
David?
So at the start of the video, kind of going in the Salem Street entrance, it looked to me like there were 2 soccer fields on the left side of the entrance, and which is the first time I'd seen that. And then also I think there was still one, like, when it finally came around, it looked to me like there was a 3rd field over on the other side. Am I?
So the third field that you're referring to, that's the one that's adjacent to the playgrounds, that's the U8 field. The other 2, so they're sized so that they could be U8 fields, if desired. So it's showing, we had sized those out, but they're not formal fields per se. I think the video is just showing.
So they'll be graded grass areas, right? And if Dennis wants to get out there with his little, lime runner and put down some stuff, you can certainly have U8 fields over there. So we were just showing the potential, not that you have to program for that, but we have that area over there that we've designated for that, and it's flat. And it's just a matter of, do you want to put lines on it or not?
Okay, but previously there were 2 fields that were more in the center of the site.
Always been one field in the center next to the playground and the basketball court, in between kind of the 2 access drives. And then over on the left side, those are the 2 grass areas that I mentioned. They've been there, it's just a matter of if we strike them or not.
Anyone else?
Yes. Just to follow up on that, what David just brought up, and I know it's only a visual, by the way, it's great, but I would think that fencing would need to be put there, so kids, when they kick a ball into the parking lot, they don't automatically run. There'll be a fence to stop them. I know a ball will go over the fence, but I don't want a child to run from the soccer field to the parking area without some sort of barrier there. I didn't notice one there, but I'm assuming we would want one. And as for the stage, very nice, but if I were a parent, I wouldn't want to be to the far left or the far right, because the way you demonstrated it, a person won't see anybody on the stage. So good luck to the teachers that are gonna try to fight the parents in the middle so that they can see their child on stage. There's no egress so that people can see on the sides. Just my observation.
So the setup, we've looked at the sight lines in the cafeteria to make sure that there would be, I think it was just under 300, that would have clear sight lines when it's set up for a performance. In the video, it's set up for the cafeteria seatings right now, but we have looked at the sight lines as we've designed the space, so.
And regarding the fencing on the 2, just to clarify, those are unprogrammed grassy areas. And so this committee has not made any decision that we want those as fenced or we want to. We're just showing it it's a possibility. You don't have to do it now as part of this project. You could do it 10 years from now.
No, more fields are better for the kids in town. I think it's great. I just wanted to point that out for safety's sake, that's all.
Thank you for that. Anything else before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Okay, so moving on, feedback on the cartoon EDU pillar.
So actually, this was included, I understand that you did cover it in the May.
Last meeting.
Yeah, it was the last meeting, whatever the date was on the last meeting.
Okay.
And so, it was just that it was discussed at town meeting, and then it is now posted on the website, so it is available. And then also just mentioning that the next pillar would include not only potential bits of the video that you just saw, but also the tax information. So there is one more pillar to come.
Okay. And then the next item, which is the feedback on the PR materials for sharing, is that with reference to that?
Yes.
So in your packet there, there was some great work that was done with PR group, Jordan Whittier, Mark, et cetera. This is the, I believe, this document here that everyone should have received. So regarding this is just being finalized. You've had an opportunity to review it. Obviously, it's highlighting the town meeting vote on the 13th, the debt exclusion on the 16th. This is considered to be a draft. I know that committee members have received, what it will cost and some of the approximate numbers. Just to be clear, that vote is actually happening on June 18th. There's been some preliminary discussion, so some of the metrics that are there are what they believe are forecasting what will come forward in terms of the number. But nothing has been official. And then in terms of the cost sharing, for the town, that is to be determined, as has been mentioned, in the community forum that we just had. We are working towards having a tri-board meeting, and the manager would be looking to have some discussions with select board and other financial stakeholders within the town to discuss financial options in terms of potentially using any of the town's cash reserves, a free cash position or capital stabilization to co-fund this endeavor, and those discussions will be forthcoming. So, at this point, this has not gone out to the public, but we want to just share that with you. It talks about the importance of the two-part process of having a favorable town meeting vote as well as a ballot box debt exclusion, and it gives those dates. It talks about the rare opportunity, obviously based on the metrics that are there, it is tens of millions of dollars that we would receive. It talks about project questions, the project website, and then as you move into the second part of that, that this is a unique opportunity to partner with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. I know there's been discussions if, working with MSBA versus if we weren't working with them, what the cost would be to the town. If we were not to take advantage of this unique opportunity and didn't have a favorable vote, obviously it would lead to delays, potential, cost increases, having to devise another plan. If we tried to engage in the future, there's no guarantee that we would be accepted for a future endeavor, that any sort of modifications would be allowed. And then there was discussion about the cost of a future feasibility study and what that cost would be to the town versus getting some cost sharing with MSBA. It talks about the need to the public and talks about the 6 elementary schools and how we can create a modern environment for our students and teachers to have what is one of the most important activities that happens in this town, which is the educational exchange between the teacher and the student. And it talks about just the overall support and the overall schedule, and talks about the value proposition of why having a combined school in terms of lower costs, a smarter investment, being able to have a suite of services under one umbrella that can serve a very large population of our students. Yes, we've talked about the fact that the North has been identified as the primary area of the town to focus on as a first project to move forward. And we've talked publicly about trying to address the needs of the west side of town as well. And just talking about, streamlining operations and a stronger community presence, better learning environment, better outcomes for our students. And then it gets into the site plan that you see, talking about where the bus entry is, the vehicle entry, parking, the main entry, into, it says main entry plaza, which is basically the entrance, your pre-K entry and your playground. So obviously I've articulated that. I know you can all see it, but I'm also doing it for the benefit of the recording that's going to people that might be viewing from home. If anyone has any, questions or comments, this would be the time to share that.
When are we sending this out? is this just gonna be a handout at the 4th of July, or is this going into the water bills?
So I don't wanna just unilaterally speak to the first part of your question, but I will say that there were discussions today in the leadership meeting about doing an insert. The concern that we had about something of this size, that it would increase the cost of sending out the water bill, and if we could fit this much data in a small insert like you've seen in previous, I'm thinking this may not work. Perhaps we could do that insert and do a double-sided. And typically it's just been the slip of paper for the front. Maybe we can do something on the back and notate for them to turn it over for additional information, so we'd have two sides of that. That's open for discussion.
So just to back
Sure.
up, do we plan on doing a mass mailing prior to the vote like we did? Is that something on the radar?
So, it's something we have to be very careful about, because we're not allowed to spend town funds to advocate for a ballot question.
So if that's the
So-
case,
So,
then I would be in favor of spending a little bit more on the insert of the water bill.
so if we talk about this particular product as Fun on the 4th, we've got a series of things that are gonna happen over the summer, whether they're in the schools or even leading up to the vote, when we have open houses, something like that would be kind of, this would be the first blush to hit the Fun on the 4th, say for instance. And then, try to capture as much detail as we can onto an insert in the water bill, and then kind of maybe have a revised version of this that includes tax implications for the second of the summer, we want it, at every school, at every open house, we're gonna take it to the senior center, I think that would be kind of the.
So to that point, if I just may add, I apologize, Nicholas, we talked about doing boards, on easels so that they were out in prominent locations. Just to make sure I put this out there, that July 18th is when the insert would be due into the tax collector's office, and the water bill would go out August 1st. So those are the dates, and that's been shared with the leadership team, and that's as of today.
Can we do boards for Fun on the 4th?
I mean, we can do anything, like that's certainly noted, and we can do that once we get a final product that everybody,
It just makes sense if we're gonna have some traffic down there, and it's beautiful piece of artwork, so.
The biggest piece was to get in front of you today with this. This is the first time we've had the full composition of the committee to really have a group discussion, to be able to go to print on some of these things, and then take a list of ideas and kind of roll them out. So the intent would be to get into every school, every public space, Fun on the 4th. We can certainly do this in copy form as handouts for people to take away. It has the QR code, it has the important dates. And then the water bill piece is a key piece as well. We're just trying to be cognizant of the cost and leverage that opportunity, and perhaps we can use the real estate on both sides of the insert, and you get more information out in that particular publication.
Could you do a QR code with that nice video that we just saw? Could you put that on the paper just to boost that video?
What is that QR code linked to? The website?
Just to the project.
Goes back to the project website.
Just to, right to that video.
Well, what I'd really like to do, and this is just about that video, I'd like that video to be kind of like the top half of the website, that opening page of the website. Just plays.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say the
like-
same thing.
So we can leave the QR code the same, but when you get there, what's playing on the top is that video, and and that way, everybody who clicks on that is gonna see that video, and then they're gonna stop and watch.
We've talked a lot about, sorry.
Sorry, no,
I just was saying, I wonder,
it's gonna
back
captivate more
right,
to enjoy the
Especially once we
project.
have the cartoon EDU overlay on top of it with the dollars, it will be phenomenal.
Right.
But the intent, if I may, the intent for this flyer was to not only produce the boards that could be scattered around the town, but also for Fun on the 4th to have a actual handout versus go to the QR code. I mean, not all not all individuals are gonna be willing to just open their camera and do it, and then even if they do, will they read it? Something in their hands to have a takeaway that answers. And the other intent of it was to also have a factual information so that other committees that are in town that have been established in support of this project can use factual information to disseminate into their process as well.
To Eric's point, I like the idea of it going back to the landing page on the
Yeah.
town's website with the project page, because I'm curious, and I don't wanna go on the record with this, but I'm wondering if Ken Lloyd can see the click rate to that site, that we can actually get some analytical
Feedback.
data on the back
Yeah,
end.
absolutely.
So I really like that idea. I apologize, I wanna just turn over to Nick, cause I did ask him to pause, and then I see you, David.
Thank you, sorry about that. So this is awesome, this is super, super great. I've been doing a lot of talking around town, there's a couple of thoughts I have about this, just in terms of what folks have been asking me when I'm ranting to them about this, is there any way we can include any kind of detail about what might happen to the Wildwood and Root Street properties in this document? Because it's already quite comprehensive, and that is a frequent follow-up question I have received is, what would happen to those? I mean, or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Because I've been telling people they would be returned to the town by the
yes,
school department,
that's the,
which is,
they would vote to be returned to the town, and then the town would make a determination. The town has no intention of doing anything other than municipal uses for those properties.
there's a factoid in that of the school department would, I mean, that's still to some degree subjective. Perhaps the leadership group might consider including something on that, because that's a very frequent question in response to preliminary information about the project. Secondly, I'll add, in conversations about this project with people, you will be shocked to know how many people go, what are you talking about? What is this? I have no idea what you're talking about. Even now, after we are so caught up in this, and there is a significant degree of lacking awareness here. So this is awesome. I think this will be super helpful. Now, just returning really quickly, so this can go in the mail from the town, but it can go in the water bill?
So at a certain point in time, because putting inserts in the water bill, we just have to be really careful about not crossing the threshold where the state's gonna come and look at us and say, are you spending that money? Because there's also a town meeting, we have a little bit of wiggle room, because we do have to advertise the town meeting, we want people to come out, we don't get a quorum, we have to advertise the town meeting. But we have to be really careful, like I feel like another $10,000 spend on the town side to do a mailing across the whole town, while I think that would be great, I just am concerned. The town clerk and I got a big glowing missive from the state basically saying, we saw you have a ballot question coming up. Here's all the rules. And so the last thing I'd want is for us to kind of stumble into some sort of violation from the state.
Thank you. And my last super niggling edit is, I mean, could we break the word cafetorium into cafeteria and auditorium? Because it just feels like I've never heard the word cafetorium before, or I have, but it's.
We never went to the Butler.
Yeah.
What about a cafeteria?
Yeah, what's a cafeteria?
I don't know, it's just a minor.
I think that's good feedback. David, you have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, actually, this is some feedback on this.
Sure.
I think this is a really great piece of work. This is a really comprehensive brochure, so great work on this. I do have, what's really one piece of feedback here, which is that where we talk about like, all right, vote at both, this is the upper right hand corner of it, town meeting, easy enough, debt exclusion. I think that debt exclusion is maybe a little bit of jargon that we want to be a little bit careful about. I think, like if I say vote at both, well, how do I vote at the debt exclusion? Like, I'm not even sure where you vote for that. So I think we probably, my immediate suggestion would just be to replace that with like ballot question, because that people understand what that is. Oh, it's like a ballot vote. It also says in one of the second paragraph on the left side that this project will require approval of the town meeting 13th and by ballot vote for debt exclusion. So the ballot vote there is good, but I wonder if there's again a way to just sort of say like to approve financing or
Funding.
just a way to describe funding, to describe what it's doing rather than the technical terms of the debt exclusion. So that's fine.
Or special election or something.
I mean, we can certainly say it. I don't want to give anybody the impression that it's not, that it's not a debt exclusion. I've been really careful as we've gone through this whole process to say debt exclusion and be really specific about the language that I've tried to use. And my hope is that would engender somebody asking a question if they don't know, but I really wanna, I wouldn't wanna get accused by someone of saying, you didn't say there was gonna have to be a debt exclusion on here. And then, because we didn't say it, you know, I just don't wanna be caught in a gotcha moment where we've been really careful all along to say, this is not a Prop 2.5 override, but it is gonna be a debt exclusion, and everybody, I think, so I've just tried to be really consistent about that. So I wouldn't want that language in, I think the first one where you say, if we change that to ballot question, I think that's not a problem. But the second one, a ballot vote for a debt exclusion, I really would want to keep that.
I think I'm
It
more
has
about adding some description of what it means, which would be more transparent than just using the term if you don't know what a debt exclusion is.
Debt exclusion to fund the project.
Debt exclusion ballot question?
Or debt exclusion, funding, something.
You gotta be
Funding,
careful
gym
with funding
cafetorium.
Yeah.
Something for
No,
us
I
to
think
think
it's,
about.
I think it's a valid, I think you're bringing up good points. I understand, you know, wanting to keep the debt exclusion because, you know, versus doing it in override, people typically, I get what you're saying, if you're someone that's never voted before, you've never heard of some of these terms, so maybe there's some happy medium.
Mark's already fixed it right over here. It's good.
Yeah. So, anything, yes?
I know the intent here is not to put dollars, but when we click in and we get into the cartoon and video and we layer in the cost, how do we reference the cost? Do we reference it as 173? Do we reference it as the net of, let's say it was 125 million after reimbursement? How do we project that number?
Usually have it listed as total project cost versus local share, which is the cost directly to the taxpayers of the town of Wilmington. And then everywhere we put out those numbers, that's what we explain.
Which is why I think it's really, this 18th date is really critical, because then I feel like we can start actually saying it loud, local share, and
Right.
so people aren't kind of hovering on the edge of this precipice of what's the local share, and eventually we're going to say it loud, and then that triggers a whole lot of extra information.
Because I kind of get a little squeamish when people reference it as 173 million when that's not what it's going to be.
I think it's an excellent question, and I know you were just kind of giving out an example, but I can tell you that the number that you did use, we're trying to get very south of that number. So, just to help, you know, and he's working on it, yeah.
Well, I think you're gonna have to do the total project amount, MSB reimbursement, the town, whatever the town share is gonna be, and then the taxpayer share.
Maybe just a simple addition problem.
Right.
Or subtraction and just lay it out.
Yeah, once we, again, those are
Cartoony.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, once we have the local share, I'm gonna do the thing like I did in October, where I said, this is based on these set of assumptions. These are the assumptions, and that's how you get to this tax effect. And, you know, people wanna come back and push back on the assumptions, they can, but I'm gonna base it on some assumptions. And that's, you know, part of that's gonna be that the town's gonna contribute something. If the town decides not to, then that's gonna change the calculus, but they're gonna base it on that assumption, and then that's gonna be what the calculator is, it's based on these X set of assumptions. With a link to your assessor's maps, figure out what your value is.
So then, anything else regarding that? So in terms of, so working group updates is the next one on the agenda.
Do you want to, Justin?
Yeah, a few of us met, I think it was Mark, myself, and Ronnie met last week. And we just talked, part of it was to talk about the flyer that we just looked at. And I think also to kind of talk to Christine's point, just to have some sort of I used the term, I think, Mark, you helped me out with the elevator speech about, with June 18th being so close to Fun on the Fourth, is what are our talking points at the Fun on the Fourth? What are the numbers we're going to use? What is the phrasing we're going to use? Debt exclusion, what does that mean? So just to be able to have some bullet points about this is what this means, these are the numbers, things like that. So, and what else? Was that about it?
We also have a sign of genius for the Fun on the Fourth, that
Yes.
we are looking for more volunteers to help support the time at the booth in order to have a meaningful conversation with the community. We don't want to leave the booth unattended, and at the moment, we do not have full participation, so we're truly looking for this team and for this community and this committee to help us with that.
If everyone picked up 1 2-hour shift, we'd be covered.
The problem with having students is that we definitely want people that are educated and educated about the project and can speak to it intelligently and be able to convey and articulate proper answers to their questions. And just feeling that if we have students, yes, we can have students for support, but we really need the anchors to be members of this team.
So in terms of that, is it helpful if we maybe send out another message to the committee about the sign up genius, just so it's right at the top of their email box?
Yes.
If people can. I know I signed up for the beginning night. I would take additional time, but unfortunately I have to go out of town. So I put in for what I could, but I understand, that the help is needed. So maybe if we can just redistribute that and see if people want to re-engage, to the extent that they can.
I mean,
That would
it's
be
more, I love the idea of having students and teachers there, but you really do want somebody that's part of this committee that is well-educated, knowledgeable, has been through the process, understands and can articulate it best to the, to the people, kind of.
Yeah. So I will take a couple of shifts, I'll wait till the end, so we'll pick the ones people want.
Yes.
I don't know if Dave's gonna say this, but I'll share this with the rest of the school committee too, see if we can get some of our number for that.
Thank you. Yes, Karen?
In addition to saying that undoubtedly we have school committee members who would be willing to do a shift and who also have the knowledge of the project that they can speak to it. But also there are members of PAWS that would be willing to do this and also good ambassadors for the project. They ran a session that Dr. Brandon and I participated in.
I think
that
one's a little bit tricky because a lot of members of the PAWS are also in support of the Yes Vote Committee for Wilmington Schools, and we don't want to get into a situation where we're advocating one way or another. Our intent is not to say vote yes for this school. Our intent is just to give factual information to the public for them to make a decision that's best for them.
And that's the real tricky part, we really have to, again, it goes back to advocating for a ballot question. It's not just, well, first of all, I think the Fun on the Fourth has made it very clear that they don't want the advocation for a ballot question on their site. But secondly, we also don't want to be kind of put in a situation where somebody who's speaking for this committee is saying something that might get us in a little bit of trouble.
No,
So,
those are the points.
I mean, I don't know, then it's backup, or, I don't know, we just have to
Well,
be careful about people that aren't here.
They're gonna be local, they're going to be present, they will have they have their own versions and ideas of how to garner support, but we don't wanna be kind of intertwined with that. We just wanna make sure that we're laying out factual information.
Thank you for that. Are we okay to move on to the next item, do you think? Okay. So the next item is discussion, correspondence, and new items. Yes.
Is this where I can ask a general question about the project?
Sure, the next item's committee questions as well, so it's committee questions as well, but I don't wanna,
They seem kind of the same.
It is part of the same, but I just wanna make sure in terms of like correspondence and new items, was there anything that we had across the table here that we didn't?
Judy, it sounded like you received emails.
Should those need to go on the record?
So we have received the email correspondence that, this publication that was sent out by Tracy that had a list of, emails. Do you want me to line list some of these, just to get them into the record and give a summary?
I don't think we've done that in the past,
Okay, okay, just wanted to make sure that I was, not answering you, but, so certainly, I will say, just for the record, a lot of these have been spoken about in community forums in some capacity, and we can certainly work on a next wave of updates onto the FAQs, that if there is anything pertinent in here, that we can pull it out and make sure it gets added to the composition that's out there. Would that be fair? Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to committee, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, just new items?
Yes, yep.
I just want to take this opportunity to introduce two people to the committee. One, Braden Foley, who's over here. Braden is an 8th grade student at the middle school. I had the pleasure to meet with Braden last Thursday, right? And Braden is doing a civics project on this project. So, awesome. So he's there, so I want to give a shout out to him.
So Braden, I did email you this afternoon.
I got that on the way here.
Okay, good, okay, thank you. Yes.
And also just bring to the committee's attention, Dave Thompson, who's here. Dave Thompson will be the interim superintendent of the Wilmington Public Schools starting July 1st, so thank you, Dave. Your hand for the good group, big group, but a good enthusiastic group.
Did you have a question?
I did, so I was at town meeting and was talking about this project with some folks, and one of the things that came up, this is super miscellaneous, was snow removal from this property. Because there's a lot of kind of road intersecting with concrete, so I don't know if that's been part of any preliminary planning or, because it's basically just like, oh, that snow removal is gonna be a pain in the butt, so I told them I'd bring that up at the meeting.
I'm sure DPW will come up with it. Bang.
Yeah.
They always
All
do.
all that grass area.
Yeah.
It's gonna be snow.
The toughest thing of any new build, including when we built this, the senior center, town hall, is the first year, ice melt destroys concrete.
Yeah.
And even after the first year, calcium chloride, any of them really damage it in some way, shape, or form, but it is the best product. So when you look at the amount of cement, concrete out here, it becomes a battle because you try to make it safe, but not damage the materials. And then the DPW, I know on a lot of the builds, I'm sure on this one, they look at where snow can go. On this site, we actually, when it gets really bad, we actually DPW actually hauls it up. And that happens in a lot of sites when you get that much parking. So that's definitely something Jamie and those guys will look at and evaluate. But I'm sure there's something in the plan for the average storm, a way to put it, and how we'll,
It's been a topic of conversation at all of our site subcommittee meetings.
Thank you.
Battle between snow removal and curbs.
Any other committee questions? Yes.
I just want to say this, and I know that I mentioned it before, but I just gotta put it on the record that I really would like to see us replicate the berm and fencing on the east side of the property to the extent that that's feasible. I think, a 6-foot berm and an 8-foot fence makes a better neighbor. if that's something, I think. And I think if you did that, their house is so far away from the school that when you do that rendering, kind of like what it looks like, it's gonna be like a non-issue. And that may not satisfy them, like nothing might satisfy them. But I'm more concerned about saying that we did something reasonable in response to what was a concern. And so being able to say, we gave them this, this fantastic screening, I think that we insulate ourselves from somebody else doing this and say, you didn't do everything you could.
So we did make that suggestion at the Butters meeting, and there will be an update to the site plan once it's reviewed by you, and we come up with some options available for the latest comments we got from the Butters meeting. We are kind of on a little pause because we had to get documents to submit to MSBA, so they had a kind of a baseline of what we're moving forward with. So it's a work in progress with the Butters, a lot of work to continue on post-vote.
We'll say that.
We'll keep the when do you plan on telling us what you think would be the town share after, we get the MSBA numbers on the 18th? When do you foresee that?
Well, so, I mean, I'm gonna make a suggestion to folks that we contribute 15 million.
Okay.
But obviously, that's my suggestion. The select board is gonna have they're gonna decide. Yeah, I was trying to just get started. Select board, the FinCom's obviously gonna have a say on it, the school committee's gonna be there and be as part of that tri-board meeting. But that's gonna be yeah, I mean, that's, the tri-board meeting's on the 23rd, so that's when I would be proposing that. So that's the Monday after we get it from MSBA, so we'll get on the 18th, then the next Monday, we'll be putting forward that proposal. It obviously won't be real until the town votes for it, because we can put it in the warrant and FinCom can recommend it, but until September, when the town votes to do that, that'll be the ultimate decision, but I think they're gonna vote for the school. They'll probably vote for the extra money.
Yes. Just one more thing, is if anybody has any feedback or suggestions for the website, I've been working with the PR team to kind of sift through some feedback, and I've been working with Tracy one-on-one to make improvements. So if you have anything that jumps out at you, just send it my way and I'll work through it and make some reasonable suggestions with her.
I like the suggestion for the banner.
That's great, yeah.
Blue plane with the cartoon EDU overlay, I think would be.
Yeah, definitely. I will tell you, FAQ is sort of difficult to manage the limitations of the website template. That's the one area that we can't seem to make some improvements.
Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. If everyone else is all set on questions, just before we move on to public comments, I just wanted to take this opportunity, based on the fact that we have the full composition of the committee here. As has been mentioned, Dr. Brand will be leaving the district, and I wanted to take this opportunity as the incoming chair to publicly acknowledge Glenn and to thank him wholeheartedly on behalf of the town of Wilmington, on behalf of this committee, for his leadership and his dedication to Wilmington, not only as a school superintendent, but also being one of the strongest advocates for this project. I know there are a lot of mixed emotions as to his departure. This is a great opportunity for him, for his personal life and for his professional life. And I would be one of the first of many, I'm sure, to wish him nothing but the utmost success in his future endeavors. And so I know that we do have another meeting that he would be attending on June 10th, but it wouldn't be as personal and as in-person as this, because the intent is to do that virtual. And then certainly for the tri-board, he's certainly welcome to attend, but I know the intent is to take some personal time before starting his next assignment. And I'm thrilled that he has taken this opportunity to introduce us to David Thompson. Eric and I have had the pleasure of meeting with David, and he definitely has a wonderful personality, a tremendous depth of knowledge. I'm very pleased with the school committee's decision to come forward with David, and as much as we are acknowledging Glenn and giving him a heartfelt thanks and a sincere best wishes, I think our future is bright with the leadership that we have as we work towards finding a permanent superintendent for the town of Wilmington. So I'd like to offer a round of applause. So next is public comments. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, I would just kindly ask that you state your name and address for the record. Would anyone like to speak this evening? Yes, sir.
Brady Floyd, 159 Shawshank Ave. On the kitchen, was that square feet that you were discussing about? It was like the teachers, there's 276. Like, I have all my notes right here, but it has like the admins, was that square feet or was that classrooms?
That's
Like for reimbursement? Square feet. Thank you.
Anything else? Would anyone else like to speak or ask a question? Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening. One of the things that's
If you can just state your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it.
Kevin McDonald.
And your address, please.
140 End Street,
Thank you,
what we did.
thank you.
I can't speak for the entire public of Wilmington, but I think it's probably logical to assume that having a forum when people are fighting to get home from traffic, getting home from work through traffic is probably not the most respectable time to have a forum. And I would suggest that before this meeting, you'd have a forum on maybe Saturday evening at like maybe 7:30 after people are done with sports with their kids, where they're done with their jobs, who have to work on Saturday. And I think the board should look at that.
Thank you, I just wanted to, just respond to that if I may, just that, we talked about the time and we tried to have it during some daylight just to allow for people that may not want to drive at night. And there was some discussion on that about making it later, so I at least want to acknowledge, I can understand your point, but we did have discussion just to try and have some daylight hours for people to be able to come in that may not be comfortable driving at night.
I wasn't able to make it here earlier. About how many people would you say were here from the public?
I mean, I would say maybe 15 to 20, some were committee members that were here. But it's a valid point, I just wanted to let you know that we did have some thoughtful discussion about that.
15 people out of 17,000 voters who are going to be impacted by increased taxes. That's not really a good number. The gentleman over there, he mentioned that people are still like, what's going on? Hey, what's this all about? Well, you know, I stand by my comments earlier that calling this project the Wildwood School Project is somewhat deceitful. Maybe it's not intentional, but it's deceitful because most people in town see the Wildwood School as a very deficient building that either needs to be renovated or knocked out. But they still think that there's a project going on there when it's totally not going on there. And so this board ought to do something about raising awareness to the public that in fact has no desire in your hearts to address anything with that. Those of you who don't know me, a little bit of my background is that I'm a licensed construction supervisor, licensed heavy equipment operator, worked on all kinds of sites from blasting mountains to digging ponds to working in other states on horizontal directional drilling, working in tunnel construction. I've seen just about every different type of site that you can imagine out there. I haven't heard any discussion here tonight about test holes where the school is proposed to be built, identification of contaminants, the quality of the ground to support a school. But I have, at a recent meeting with some neighbors, been made aware that they see standing water in that area where the school's gonna get built. And as you know, we're in a type of climate where a foundation has to get built below the frost level. And so when you look at the plan and the positioning of the school and in close proximity to the neighbors that have bought this, keeping in mind that there's a very high water table there, questions have arisen as to whether there's going to be a diminishing of the groundwater storage of the water and causing it to possibly have a negative impact on the neighbors. In addition to that, there's been some talk from people who've been in town for a long time that there's been contamination dumped on the site.
Mr. McDonald, I'm gonna interrupt you. People's opinions and theories, we're gonna rely on the site professionals, and there are parts.
Perfect.
But I'm just saying, we're gonna rely on the experts that are working with that to make sure that if there are any circumstances that we need to be aware of, that those are addressed. and that they're mitigated. I just wanna ask you to kindly refrain, from making statements that we don't have anything factual to back them up.
That's the problem. That's why I brought this up. Because if you don't have anything factual and you're ready to go to a meeting for a debt exclusion, the big question is, why don't we have the facts? Why isn't there definitive answers to those questions tonight when you're talking about spending money at a town meeting and you're looking to impact people and possibly force them out of town because they can't pay their taxes? The term debt exclusion is very confusing to people who are not familiar with it. They might even think that debt to them is being excluded, when in fact what it is basically removing this debt or this impact from the constraints of Proposition 2.5. But ultimately, what it is, it's an increase and it's a burden to people in town. And this gentleman, I thank you for your interest, and it's nice to see a student here. So for his benefit, and he's our future, and he might want to live in town, and to keep making it more difficult for people to afford something with the high taxes, not to even mention the increase in the price of houses. Some people are not happy with this. They're not happy with the fact that you're not addressing that the Glen Road School can be a place for early education.
Kevin, I
did not interrupt you.
No, I understand
This has
it, but
been a little disrespectful.
No, I just wanted to kindly ask you if you can arrive to I'm not asking you to stop talking, I'm asking if you can arrive at a closing comment or a question, because we're kind of getting into different sites, and the Glen Road is not the topic of this, it's the North, the Wildwood, and Woburn Street. And this committee has gone through a selection process to get to a preferred option, where I wanted to give you ample time. It's been, over 5 minutes, and I want you to be able to have the freedom to speak, but we need to kind of bring it in and make it germane to what we're talking about here. I understand if you have thoughts and opinions about not wanting to support the project, or may have opinions about uses of other places and what could be done, but I would just kindly ask you to keep it focused on what's being proposed.
I think all my comments were germane to the project and to the impact on the taxpayers, so I'm gonna have to disagree with your perspective on that. Getting back to the fact that you don't have answers on what's underground there, that's disturbing.
We have preliminary reports, and everything that we have received, nothing
You
indicates
just
that.
got finished saying that you have no facts.
No, that's not what I said,
Sorry,
that's
Mr.
not what
Slagle?
I said. That's not
I didn't hear what he
I said.
said.
Sorry, apologies.
I'm saying that the preliminary reports that have been done, whether it's soil testing, et cetera, on the site, nothing has come back that has raised a red flag that we have to be concerned about at this time.
Okay,
There'll be further work that will be done. We're 30% into this endeavor.
Okay. Maybe you can tell us, below the surface of the field, where is the historical seasonal high groundwater table?
Leanne, if you have any metrics or anything you can share.
Yeah, I don't have that right off the top of my head, Mr. McDonald, but there is several documents that you referenced that are available on the website, have been completed for the project, including geotechnical analysis of soils, borings done in the building footprint, borings done within where the proposed drives are, and throughout the site. We've also done hazardous materials analysis of the soils that we actually extrapolated through that process of doing
On this
borings
site?
on the north immediate site, right? And all of that stuff came back negative.
And the areas that you tested for the contamination, what would be the distance between the boreholes that you drilled to investigate that?
I can't estimate for you what the distance is. The actual borehole drawings and locations of where we did the testing is located on that same report that's up posted on the website if you want to be able to reference that.
But just like a guesstimate, like would it be like 100 feet apart, 50 feet apart, 200 feet apart? I'm just wondering because when they did the boreholes for identifying the contamination at the Olin site, there were like 300 boreholes.
Again, Mr. McDonald, a different project,
It's
a different project, and I understand that,
Thank you
but
for letting me
I,
know that that's not the project, because I would have never known that.
with
I
all due
would-
respect, Mr. McDonald,
I would-
again, we're talking specifically, your question has been asked and answered, that report has been
It's called
generated.
an analogy. When someone uses an analogy to,
Understood, but again,
I don't think you do understand.
I do understand, the question has been asked and answered. So I'm gonna bring your comments to a close. Would anyone else like to speak this evening? Hearing none. Okay, moving on to the next meetings. The next meetings will be Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. It will be a remote meeting only. The intent of that will be, just to give an update, we will be doing the OPM interviews will happen on Thursday, June 5th. So we will be interviewing the top 3 candidates for that. We can say that into the record that we will be interviewing Colliers, Vertex, and Left Field. And so those interviews will be public. That agenda has been posted today before leaving Town Hall, so that is a matter of public record. So that will be happening, and the intent on June 10th, we will be deliberating after those interviews the same night and bringing a recommendation forward to the SBC. So the intent on that June 10th meeting would be to have that discussion and make a vote at that time. So it should be a relatively short meeting. And then moving on to Monday, June 23rd, 2025 would be the intended tri-board meeting that would start, through the select board. And then next would be the July 22nd, 2025 SBC meeting. And those are the 3 meetings that we have scheduled right now. So, does anyone have any questions? Or would I ask that if anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made over here. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Jesse Boucher,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezza,
Yes.
Nicholas Golden,
Yes.
Christine Holleran, Dennis Kelly,
Yep.
Paul Millerani,
Yes.
Greg Minor,
Yes.
Christine Murray. Yes. Judy O'Connell.
Yes.
Christine Pendergast.
Yes.
David Ragsdale.
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero.
Yes.
Stacy Scott.
Yes.
Eric Schlegel.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.